Good afternoon and welcome to the November 1st, 2016 meeting of the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust. The first item on our agenda is to approve the minutes for the September 30th, 2016 Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust meeting.
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, please cast your votes. And it is approved. Next is to ratify the claims. I don't know if you could give us a rundown on a couple of those significant claims.
Okay. I'd be happy to. Significant claims, the Level West Apartments over in the Deep Juice. We provided them $1.15 million of incentive to them as a result of them completing their 97-unit apartment complex. The 21C Hotel Museum project, we provided a $2 million incentive payment to them. However, there was a clause in their contract where we had a loan with them, and we provided a $3.3 million loan initially on that project, in addition to a $2 million incentive payment pursuant to our agreement. They were able to find additional funding for their project, and as a result of that, they had to pay the $1 million of the loan off. So instead of us giving them a $2 million check and them writing us a $1 million check, we just gave them the net of that. And then there's some significant payments to Boeing. You'll see all three. We have three contracts with Boeing. They paid $122,000 for jobs for 2014, $272,000 for 2015, and then for Boeing 2, $888,000 for 808 jobs, and for Boeing 3, $201,000 and $201,250 for 161 jobs. The average salaries of those jobs was anywhere from $95,000 to over $130,000. So on all three of those projects. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. Questions? We have a motion to approve.
Second.
A second. Any questions? Please cast your votes. And it is so approved. Next are items for individual consideration. We see Mr. Eric Winger, Public Works Director, here. Eric, if you would start off with item A, the amendment to the contract for engineering services, PC 0394 from Project 180.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have four items that are Project 180 related on your agenda today, and the first is a A&E amendment with Tetra Tech. It is for Package 6, and these were the streets that were McGee, Northwest 4th, Robinson, Kerr, Main, and Gaylord. You know, as we wrap up a lot of the work, this is just some of the final cleanup as we reconcile some things that we had asked the engineer to do in addition to his base scope of work. What was included were some intersection changes and signal changes that are occurring at EK Gaylord, and a lot of this was due to some of the work that was concurrent with the intermodal transit hubs. So there were some changes that came as those two projects were designed side by side. We also had them make some changes to some of the striping on the Gaylord project as well that were also in reflection to some of the hub work. So the amendment that's for you today is $25,000, and we recommend approval.
Questions or comments?
Move approval.
A motion and a second. Please cast your votes. And it is so done. Next item.
Thank you. It's item 6B, and this is a change order for an amendment number 2. This goes to package number 7B, and so this predominantly is Park Avenue. It's $154,782. It also adds about 130 days to the contract, or at least to one of the phases of the contract. The work that was included, there was a lot of water work, waterline work that was unforeseen, that was uncovered during construction that required significant additions. We also had police help us with some rush hour traffic issues as we were phasing that project, so the contractor engaged police officers in their off-duty time to help monitor and traffic control. There was a basement that had some structural issues that we encountered that also required some additional repairs, and then there was also some additional striping of streets that was included as a part of both the change order and the amendment. The work is substantially complete on this, and we're also recommending approval.
Thank you, sir. Questions or action from the trustees? Hello, Jim. We have a motion to approve. Second. And a second. Any further discussion? Please cast your votes. And it is so done. Next item, sir.
Thank you. This is item 4C. It's change order number 4. This is for package 7A, so this is Kerr and Harvey. Again, the work is substantially complete. This change order is $47,827, and various items were included. There was additional street striping. There was an additional ADA accessible ramp that was installed and some other sidewalk changes. We also added some additional pavement that was required due to some other utility repairs, and then also landscaping. So with that, we're also recommending approval of this change order.
Eric, wouldn't it be obvious that ADA compliant sidewalk is part of the initial bid?
I would say yes, and I think in some cases what we found in just generally the downtown area is the areas that were affected absolutely had new ramps. I believe this was one that wasn't included in the original document. So the contractor, when they bid it, did not have it included in their price. This is a change order to the contractor to have them go ahead and make that additional improvement. Should the engineer had known, it's probably something we could have looked at. In a lot of cases, it's hard to have the engineers do comprehensive surveys. They're surveying the areas, and we've had a lot of changes in 180. A lot of it's done just sometimes in the field and on the fly. But we are working with them to make sure that we're not having any errors.
Any further questions or discussions?
I do. Thank you. Just one additional question. I see that the aggregate total changes between the change orders is near 8.2% now. Is there a point where we ever go back to confirm that with those change orders we haven't negated what have been maybe a second bidder?
You know, we do not do that. The state law provides that we can have up to 10% in change orders. On amendments, it's actually unlimited because it is a bid quantity. So when you look at this one, this is just a change order. The previous item was a change order and amendment, so I just clarify the two. But on change orders, the state law allows us to go up to 10%.
Thank you.
Trustee Action. Have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Any further questioning? Please cast your votes. And it is so approved. And item D.
This is the final item that's Project 180 related today, and this is just the final acceptance of work. This is package 5. What I'll call to your attention is it was actually substantially completed in July of 2014, so it's here 2 years plus later. One of the items of work that couldn't be completed until recently was the OG&E vault that's located just north of the Hightower building in Hightower Park. So this contract was left open so that we could actually work and get that vault put in. It was completed, and so now we're ready for the final acceptance of package 5. I can answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Eric?
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second. Please cast your votes. And it is so approved. Thank you, sir. Next item is a lease agreement between Oklahoma City, the Economic Development Trust, dealing with the park. Ms. O'Connor, and we have some guests that are going to be...
We do have some guests here this morning with us that are probably maybe more interested in talking about item F, but this first item is a lease agreement between the city and the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust that leases the area for the MAPS 3 park to the Economic Development Trust so that the trust can provide oversight and management oversight for the park in the future. It's similar to the arrangement that the city has with the Marriott Gardens and the Economic Development Trust, so it's a pattern that we're familiar with and provides us the ability to enter into multiple year agreements that help make sure that we have continuity and that the park is properly managed. So the City Council has already approved this agreement, and it's coming to you today for your consideration.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions for Kathy on this item?
Just a clarification, if I might. This is regarding the entire park as it's described or known by the city. I know there's upper park references, but this is the entire park. Is that correct?
This is the entire park, right?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
There's an option in the agreement for the foundation at its option to take over management of the lower park when it's developed, but that's not been decided yet.
Good question. We did have a motion and a second, didn't we? Any further discussion? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
How many acres is the lower park?
30. The park is 70 acres altogether, so the upper park is 40 and the lower park is 30.
And the programming in the two parks will probably be somewhat different, will they not?
The design and the programming that's contemplated for the two parks is very different. The North Park will be much more heavily programmed and have much more features and elements that are a part of its ability to attract people and actually generate revenues to help support its operation. And then the lower park will be more passive in design.
Okay, we have a motion second. Jim?
Additional question, if I might. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To build on that thought, the improvements that are currently within the park, like the old Union Station, and then future improvements are all obviously going to be a part of this expectation as well?
They are.
Okay.
I will clarify, I think it's yet to be determined about for example, if Union Station is to be completely renovated or the extent of those renovations and how that might work with the park, but that is contemplated as a part of the lease and management agreement that's item F.
If I could add to that, it's only in the event that the city gains an interest in Union Station, either by lease or purchase, then that automatically becomes part of the lease to the trust and will become a part of the lease to the foundation.
Okay, seeing no further questions, please cast your votes. And it is so approved. Next item, Ms. O'Connor?
Okay, the next item is item F, and this is an agreement between, with the MAPS 3 Parks Foundation, which is a new entity that is to be created that is similar to the Myriad Gardens Foundation. The same management and executive personnel are involved in it. Jim Talbert is here with us today. Maureen Hefferman and Leslie Batchelor are all representatives of the new MAPS 3 Park Foundation and have been a very important part of drafting this lease agreement and getting us to the point we are today. A few things about the agreement. It has an initial 25-year term. It allows for an initial consulting fee to be paid from the MAPS 3 use tax, not the sales tax part, but the use tax of $75,000 to help begin the services that are necessary to make sure that the park is developed in a way that that they can manage properly and meet expectations and kind of get some of those things going as the park is under construction and under development. I'm thinking that the park goes out to bid later, like in January. So the park construction will begin sometime next year for the upper park. And as we mentioned earlier, this agreement initially addresses the management of what's called the upper park, and then as the lower park is completed in the future, it can be included as well. Maureen or Jim or Leslie, I don't know if you want to add anything, or Wiley if I've missed any important elements, but we really appreciate this partnership with the Myriad Gardens Foundation and their willingness to take on the operations of this new park. One of the things that we've had just a huge success in the way that the Myriad Gardens has been operated after its renovation and really restoration. And I think that it's served as an excellent example of what can happen with maybe a little bit of profit motivation with the underpinning of some income reliability from the public sector as well on these projects. And I think that with the new park, we really think it's important for the management of the two parks to be under one organization, basically, so that they are complementary and not competitive with one another, that they really are two very different places that people can enjoy in different ways. And I think we need to realize that the Myriad Gardens is a very intense urban park, and this park will be much larger and almost 4 times as large, as the Myriad Gardens, and will have very different kinds of uses. So with that, if Maureen or Jim or anybody wants to say anything, I think we're just really pleased that we have reached this agreement and can move forward.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Jim. You sure one of the three of you doesn't want to make a speech? Okay. And if the satisfaction and the enjoyment is anything myriad by the what's going on at Pumpkinville, I had an opportunity at Maureen's invitation to watch that for a while. The enthusiasm, the joy, the excitement is just amazing, and that's hopefully what we're going to be able to spill over to this new 40-acre when it's ready to go. Any other comments or questions from? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Ann.
The programming has been tremendous. I think definitely make special attention to the food service operations because what an architect designs is not necessarily functional, and it needs to be a win-win for an operator and a win-win for the customer and a win-win for us making margin. So everything from grab and go to casual dining or whatever the case, you definitely need expertise involved in the decision-making process. So, my 2 cents.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, if I might ask a couple questions. And I appreciate the model that this Park Foundation Board can be, obviously based off the great success that the Myriad has been and the good relationship that the city and this trust have with that exceptional property. So my questions are more in the abstract, not personal specific to the people. But I'm curious about the foundation and whether or not it is constituted as a public body in terms of public meetings, public minutes, participation from the public at any point, or is it that this foundation exists separately and through the management fee, even though that's public money, it doesn't have the color of a public entity? And the reason I ask that is when I look into the agreement on pages like 12 and subsequent pages, it speaks to some of the legal requirements that they do agree to comply with, like the competitive bidding. But things like on page 14, subparagraph small Roman numeral 6, it's like the naming of facilities and things like that. It just seemed like a permanent public decision. And so I'm just curious about how that interplay is envisioned. That was one question. Sorry, Wiley.
With multiple parts, and I'll try to remember them.
How do you envision, let me try it again. How do you envision this foundation management over the park and the permanent decisions that might be made? Or
The foundation itself is a 501c organization. I'm not sure what number it is, but so it'll be independent and not subject to any public meeting or open records requirements of itself. However, it does, if they do any construction or building, they raise funds to build something on the park, they have to comply, since it is a public property, they still have to meet the competitive bidding requirements. We've requested that, just so there's no argument, though, although it's at their own private funds, they probably don't have to technically do that, but we would prefer that they do that. And what was the last part?
well, it's the portions of the management agreement that allows them to enter into leases for concession issues, naming rights perhaps associated with portions of the park.
The name of the park is subject to city council control, absolutely. Any other naming rights, like if there's a pond out there that they can sell the naming rights to, that is revenues that they will receive. They do have to inform the city manager of that, and he has the authority to take that to the city council for their comments and input. But they basically control that aspect. But the naming of the park itself is strictly subject to the city.
And then do you envision that that itself would be a competitive public process? And the proceeds of that, are they by law required to be spent back within the confines of the public property?
It's up to the city how that's handled.
The city meaning the council or the
The city
foundation?
council, right.
Okay. So you're comfortable that all roads lead back to a taxpayer-supported decision-making process?
Correct. On the naming rights, yes.
Well, Leslie had a comment to add to this, so Leslie Batcher, go right ahead.
In case it's helpful, the foundation has already been formed, and its charitable purpose is solely for the support of the park, just the way the Myriad Gardens Foundation exists solely for the purposes of Myriad Gardens. So any revenues it gets can only be used for that charitable purpose. So the goal here, and what's worked so well in Myriad Gardens, is to take all the ways in which it's important that it be a public park and make sure those are taken care of, and yet take advantage of the ways in which a private not-for-profit entity can be a little more nimble, operate a little more entrepreneurially, and raise funds through the naming rights, through the sponsorships of the events and things, so that the operating costs to the city are dramatically reduced. But because the foundation is set up only for that purpose, the funds that are raised there would never go to any other purpose.
Great, thank you, Liz. I very much appreciate that. And again, I would like to just make clear, the people involved I have tremendous respect for, and the process that it sounds like is being set up on the foundation. My concern is that Myriad and the city work wonderfully together. We're decades into that relationship, is why it's probably wonderful. I'm a little worried about the open canvas that is this park, and just want to make sure that the public feels a part of it from the beginning.
And I think a little bit of the control that the city and the trust will have in that regard is they'll need somewhat of an annual subsidy to help them operate the park. And so we have to meet annually to do that, and a lot of things can get discussed with that. So that part of the public process is there every year.
And I meant to applaud you on your negotiations, because I saw quite a few very clear requirements of them of what's required for maintenance and improvement. So I wondered where they were going to get the money. Thank you for that. Thank you for the...
One of the key things that struck me, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was mentioned that this was going to be a cooperative effort between the new park and the Myriad Gardens, not a competitive one, and what a synergistic opportunity that is to move this forward to the benefit of the citizens of Oklahoma City. Am I correct in that?
Yes, I think so. Absolutely.
Any further comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is 25, and with us it's 40 years. Is that because the lower park is included with the lease agreement with the trust, or?
I think that the 40-year lease agreement is kind of the standard term that the city enters into for leases, for long-term leases of property, and didn't really, for the management we wanted a shorter term, but I imagine it is because of the lower park and the development of it. But.
Any further comments or questions? What action would the board like to make?
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve and a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. And it's so approved. Thank you all for attending today. All right, next up we have a general manager's reports.
It's a report with G&H, the report with the Alliance.
Okay, yeah, I missed one. Excuse me. I missed two. Okay, first off, the Alliance for Economic Development, City Fiscal Year 16-17, first quarter report.
Yes, in your packet today is the first quarter report from the Alliance for Economic Development. Our financial statements are also included for the first quarter. Just a few of the highlights of projects that we were involved in over the past quarter include a great deal of work on the Convention Center and the Convention Center Hotel. We continue to lead the team involved in the acquisition of the Convention Center. That site has substantially been acquired. There are a few parcels that we're still working out, probably 3 parcels, and those 3 will probably have to go through the condemnation process in order to be acquired. On the Convention Center Hotel, we had several different actions that were taken over the past quarter related to the hotel, including the selection committee that had been appointed by the city manager met and made a recommendation that Omni Hotels be selected as the preferred developer for the hotel. That decision was approved by the city council, and we began the process of negotiating with Omni for a redevelopment agreement and preparation of a funding plan that will come back to council in a couple of months. We also have been beginning the process of acquisition for the hotel site. The site is immediately north of the convention center, kind of at Robinson and the Oklahoma City Boulevard, just south of the Chesapeake Arena. We also have worked with the city on trying to identify possible sites to develop parking to support the area, to support the activities that are planned for the park, for the new convention center, for the new convention center hotel, and also to provide parking for the Chesapeake Arena. So we've made a recommendation about a site for a parking garage, and we're now working to try to see if we can look at options that would include private development along with that parking, with the public parking, to help maybe offset some of the costs of the parking development, but also to make sure that we maximize the use of the site, because it is a pretty important site in downtown Oklahoma City. On the job creation side of things, we continued efforts to work with Boeing at their new site at Southeast 59th and Air Depot. One of the entities that the Alliance manages, the Oklahoma Industries Authority, still retains ownership of most of the property, and there's some environmental issues that we're working through at the site. And then on the GE Global Research Project, we received an Economic Development Administration grant from the U.S. Department of Commerce to complete a streetscape in the area of GE, and we still have a second phase of that along 10th Street to complete over the next few months. And the grand opening for GE was held in October, right after the end of the first quarter. We've been very active in northeast Oklahoma City. One of the projects that probably has been one that we've been the most excited, or very excited about, is Page Woodson, the redevelopment of the old Page Woodson High School. The construction in the original school building is underway and should be completed in March or April of next year. They're also constructing a new building just east of the old school. Those two buildings will house about 135 units of affordable housing, and the auditorium space and the other commercial spaces in the building have been leased to a new community development corporation that was created by the Alliance. It's called Progress OKC, and we will be managing the auditorium space and the other commercial space, and hope to be able to use it for community events, high school, school events, dance recitals, anything that comes up that might be interesting to the community and need a great venue. It'll have about 650 seats. We're having a hard hat tour later this week. If anybody would like to come, let me know, and we'll make sure we have a hard hat for you. But it's a great project, and we're very excited about it. About $28 million being spent in this first phase, and we're in discussions with the developer about the second phase right now. We continue to work on single-family home development in the JFK area, trying to find ways to get more and more home developers interested in the area, and we do seem to be getting some interest from other home builders throughout Oklahoma City. The renovation of the shopping center at Northeast 36th and Kelly, is called the Northeast Shopping Center, is underway and is making good progress. We continue to work with the Chamber and the other funders on Innovation District work, working very closely with the Brookings Institute on developing a plan and strategies to further Oklahoma City's efforts in innovation and entrepreneurship. I've been serving as the chair of the placemaking task force, and we've had some really great meetings and a lot of energy about how to have more events in the Innovation District, how to get more people from throughout Oklahoma City into the Innovation District to understand what it's about and all the great activities that are going on there. We continue to work on the Kings Crossing project over the last quarter, with discussions about that with that developer. And on the downtown development front, we have been working with the the purchaser of the First National Center about his plans to redevelop that building and trying to work through some of the details and issues on that. And we recently convened a developer forum. It's not just downtown developers, but right now we're kind of focused on downtown, and that's been an interesting forum or ability for us to get together and kind of have roundtable discussions about the challenges of development throughout Oklahoma City. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions, take any comments.
Questions or for comments for Kathy?
On the JFK housing, first of all, thank you for all the great work that you continue to do. What's the right recipe there that you're finding that's helping? I recall years ago, even with down payment assistance and lower below rate mortgage opportunities, the numbers were still just a real challenge for home builders. And so I'm just curious to know if you've cracked that code.
We are, obviously, Urban Renewal owns a great deal of land in that area. We probably still have over 700 single-family infill parcels in that area. And we have the ability to sell those at a very reduced price. I think our lots sell for $1,200 to $1,500. So it's there's a pretty big subsidy in the land itself that the developers achieve. We still work very closely with the city on affordable housing, whether that's through assistance through the city's home program or down payment assistance programs to get affordable units built. And we have a few of those under construction right now, but we're actually finding that there's quite a bit of demand for market rate housing. So what we're really focused on right now is trying to build houses that fit within the neighborhood, that match the style of the houses that are in the area still. So we've adopted residential design guidelines for our properties that we hope we can work with the city to see if they'll use those as they move forward with different design standards. But it's really mostly market rate at this point. And but we still believe that, well, maybe I should say, there are affordable houses because sometimes they're not very big. They fit on the lots and they're similar to the ones that are near them. So they're pretty simple houses, great little craftsman bungalows, those kinds of houses. So anyway, we think there's a little bit of both that needs to be built, and we really would like to see some more affordable housing, but it is a little challenging sometimes to get the right buyers in the market too.
Thank you, Jim. Any other questions for Kathy? Seeing none, we do need to approve this, do we not? So I need a motion, a second. Second. Please cast your votes. And it's so approved. Now, being back on schedule again, we have a cast of thousands for our next report from the Oklahoma City Economic Development Foundation. And I was given a list of Jennifer, Eric, Tammy, and Mike in that order. Is that? So if you all would come forward and...
Thanks for having us here today. I just wanted to quickly share with you the results from our most recent Business Retention and Expansion Report. This report is findings from June 2015 of July of this year. You should have copies of it in your packet. Just really quickly, the program impact, we visited 378 companies total this year. Those companies represent a little over 44,000 jobs. Of those companies that we visited, 178 companies expanded, so adding jobs, new investment. Those were almost about 3,000 jobs with the average salary of just over $37,000, and we saw $303 million in capital investment from that reporting period. Are we going backwards? There we go. And then just a quick overview of the business sectors represented. About a third were manufacturing, with service industry, healthcare, and transportation kind of making up the rest of the pie. A little bit of retail, a little bit of construction in there as well. Why does it keep going backwards? Okay, I'll let you click. How about that? The next slide is just kind of a brief overview. We send out a grader survey at the end of the year asking companies to kind of go a little bit more in depth on what they think about the business environment in Oklahoma City. So what you're seeing now is the most prominent satisfied responses. We get good ratings on cost of living, quality of life, public utilities, fire, police, and just overall local business climate. About 75% of people are extremely satisfied. And then conversely, we have our most prominent dissatisfied responses. Some area of improvement that we consistently hear, K through 12 education. We did narrow that down this year to ask specifically about Oklahoma City area education, as before we kind of were asking more regionally. Workforce quality, kind of hearing a little bit more of both quantity and maybe some more of those soft skills that companies would like to see more improvement on. And then, of course, basic infrastructure. We consider that actually about 31% both were dissatisfied with federal infrastructure, highways and those kinds of things, as well as the local infrastructure as well. So just some of our key findings. If you guys have any questions, happy to answer.
Jennifer, not to put you on the spot, but have you looked at how these metrics have trended over the last few years since you've been tracking them?
We have, and actually we're pretty favorable year over year. We're not seeing too much influx. We started rating these actually last year. So not too many years in the past. The last 2 years really is when we started to break down and ask businesses to get more into the nitty gritty of, you can see it on pages 12 and 13 of the report, some more in-depth specific questions about the business environment in Oklahoma City. So, but as far as everything goes, we're kind of tracking about the same as last year. So, any other questions? Thank you.
Next up.
We wanted to take a moment to briefly provide you an overview of a recently released study for the aerospace sector for the greater Oklahoma City region. The study serves as a benchmark to capture the current size, composition, and economic contribution of the aerospace sector in the region. Two components of the study are the aerospace industry survey and the economic impact assessment. The region is defined as the 7 counties in the Oklahoma City metropolitan area, plus Kingfisher, Potawatomi, and Payne County. The study actually covers 10 key results. We're just going to touch upon a few of those. First, in terms of the overall size of the aerospace sector, there are more than 230 establishments employing over 36,000 people with over $2.6 billion in payroll and with nearly $5 billion of value in goods and services. Oklahoma City and Oklahoma County remain as the hub of the industry. As you'll see, this table breaks down employment, output, and establishments by individual county within the region. You will see that Oklahoma County accounts for about 64% of the total establishments, but nearly 97% of employment. And if you look at the top 4 counties of Canadian, Cleveland, Oklahoma, and Payne County, those 4 counties alone cover 99% of the employment for the industry. So why is this report important to our economic development efforts? Well, most of the statewide surveys will ignore federal and military employment in terms of aerospace. Typically, they just are categorized as government. So it's important to take a moment to really include those within the overall sector. So as a state, we often just rank in the middle of the pack if we don't include those other areas. It's only when the federal and military aerospace employment is included that we can show the true size of our aerospace sector which is critically important whenever we're recruiting aerospace projects in terms of workforce. So Oklahoma has the 5th largest group of Air Force personnel in the United States. It has the largest group of civilian Air Force personnel in the U.S. and the 14th largest group of active duty Air Force personnel. And finally, aerospace contributes about $190 million annually to state and local taxes, with $87 million coming from personal income tax and $83 million coming from state and local sales and use tax. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Tammy Fade, Retail Manager for Retail Development and Recruitment. Just wanted to give you a quick update on retail activity. So it continues to remain strong in the local market and also nationally. Most of that's due to restaurants, so a lot of restaurant groups are looking at our market. We had a group in town this past weekend from Kansas City that was looking at restaurant sites. Also a group coming in tomorrow from Texas, bringing their CEO to look at final decisions on a site. So that seems to be very positive. Grocery tenants are expanding, so looking on the south side of Oklahoma City, we've been working really closely with our grocery consultant and working with the Alliance as well on the northeast side of Oklahoma City, so looking for gaps in the market. And then we've had some outreach efforts to existing businesses within our market. We held a technology workshop to really talk about social media and how existing businesses can really capitalize on that. And then really continuing to maintain strong relationships with the existing shopping center mall properties, so providing them data research. I know the Outlet Mall has seen strong growth in the mall out there as well. And then our travel season's been pretty hectic this year, so we've had a couple of ICSC shows, which is the International Council of Shopping Centers, and we had several meetings there with different developers. I've already had one site visit from that show, and then we have another one later this month. I think it's like November 12th or so that we have another group coming in to look at Oklahoma City. So things are good and continue to move along. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Any questions for Tammy?
And I'm the last of your talking heads. Michael Ogan with the
cleanup man.
Huh?
The cleanup spot.
Yes.
Hit a home run for us.
Oh, well, hopefully. Sort of a quick overview of our activities and metrics during the first quarter. Our pipeline of leads and prospects is as large as it's ever been. So there's still a lot of activity, people interested in this market. One of the issues is nobody's making decisions in the short term. We think partly this might be to blame on we're in an election year and a lot of people put things on hold until things are resolved after the election. Second, we think there's a higher level of nervousness within the economy regarding the sort of the decline in the energy sector that we've been with the last few years, even by companies that are not in the energy sector. I think everybody's a little nervous and gun shy that there might be something else that may happen that will affect the economy as a whole. To date, it hasn't, but I think people are nervous. Kathy mentioned the continuing work on the Boeing site. In the first quarter, we saw the groundbreaking on the new maintenance facility for the KC-46 project on the former BNSF property. Construction's well underway there. We expect the first plane will be in for its maintenance check in 2018, so they're on a fairly tight time frame to get some hangars up and a lot of apron space poured. Kathy mentioned ongoing work on the Innovation District. We've had a number of the task force meetings. There were 4 of them dealing with sort of mission and values, innovation, the placemaking, which everybody seems interested in, although most of it seems to be a lot of people want to focus on what are we going to build, and I think it's more about how are we going to get people to interact. And then the final one is governance. Are we going to form an association or some other entity to actually manage the district on a daily basis? I think that's still under discussion, a little up in the air. In terms of metrics, there's a couple of items where first quarter we're on a trend that won't get us to our goals. We're below trend. The number of companies that our BRE program has called on this first quarter is down. In part, that's because we're a position shy with the passing of Mike Chumo. We didn't have a person that's out meeting with primarily the manufacturing and warehouse sector. We hope to have that position refilled in the next couple of months, and hopefully those numbers will pick up the latter part of the year. Also, the number of jobs that have been created both for the BRE program and recruitment efforts is down a little. We think, again, since people are a little more gun-shy about doing things, we've seen that trend impact as well. Plus, the pipeline is less manufacturing and more service and warehousing than we've seen in the past. Those tend to be a little smaller. That's also impacted some of the capital investment numbers that are below trend. We've seen a lot of companies, both on an expansion basis and recruitment basis, that are putting employment in their existing space or in space that exists but doesn't need much improvement. We expect that may tick back up when we see some new manufacturing and that sort of thing. Most of our office-related development are not building buildings, they're leasing existing space, and so there's relatively minor capital improvements associated with those. And the one area we are way above trend is our proactive contacts with the site consulting community. It's one of the things we do sort of as the economy gets slower, we ramp up our efforts to go out and keep on people's radar so that when projects do come up, they think of us and contact us. Kurt's in Atlanta at the moment, meeting with some consultants to do that very work. I think that covers the high points. If we have questions, be happy to answer any.
Questions for Dave?
Thank you.
Thank you. A motion on the first quarter report.
So moved.
A motion. Second. Please cast your votes. Okay. Next up, General Manager reports.
Just a couple of items I wanted to point out to you. The SIP program, we received $3 million from the All Sports Association in this last month to reimburse the GOLD funds for the amount of money that we'd advanced for some improvements out at the softball complex. And then the Outlet Mall ended the first period. The Outlet Mall is on an August to July fiscal year because they started in August, and they finished September at sales of $24.3 million, a little under 1% below target, but they are staying. They're just a little above the prior year, so for those two periods. And on another note, we've been working with Regina and I've been working with Cabela's on getting their first year. They opened up in October of last year, completed in September, and we anticipate providing them assistance of a little over $350,000 for the sales tax that they generated. So, and with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
With the acquisition of Cabela's, do we have any indication as to what will happen relative to
We do not have
the two
any.
brands?
No, ma'am, we do not have any information on that right now.
And November 1st, do they turn the air conditioning off in this building?
I think what happened is council didn't meet today, so they didn't.
They never turned it on.
Got a note. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Do we need to vote on the general manager? No. I didn't think so. Okay. Comments from staff? Seeing none. Comments from trustees, other than the fact we want air conditioning?
Everybody's out there doing this.
Any citizens wishing to be heard? Seeing none, thank you, trustees. Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.